Once upon a time, there lived 3 fishes in a pond. They were close friends and were living together for years in the same pond. One day, while on his journey, a passing fisherman saw that the pond was filled with fishes. He was surprised and delighted, and immediately informed his fellows about it. Together, they decided to come the next morning and catch those fishes. One of the 3 fishes, who was also the wisest, heard the conversation between the fisherman and his fellows. It devised a strategy, immediately rushed to the other 2, explained the entire situation, and proposed a plan to leave the pond immediately and move to another place. The second fish agreed and decided to move out from the pond quickly. The third fish, however, mocked them. He felt that the pond was their home, and they must not leave their home. Since the other 2 fishes were unable to convince the third fish, they left the pond and decided to let him follow his own course of action. The next day, the fisherman and his fellows cast their nets and caught plenty of fishes. They also managed to catch the third fish, who had refused to leave the pond due to its foolishness, while the other 2 fishes, who had left earlier and displayed cleverness, were rescued and rewarded. Once upon a time, there lived a monkey on an apple tree. The apples were a bright red color and extremely juicy. One day, a crocodile came to the tree and asked the monkey for some apples. The monkey was glad to help. He even gave the crocodile some apples to take home for his wife. When his wife tasted the apples, she grew curious to taste the monkey's heart. She persuaded her husband to get the monkey's heart for her, or else she would die. The crocodile was in a dilemma, but finally agreed. The next day, when he went to the shore, he invited the monkey to his home. The monkey gladly accepted. He sat on the crocodile's back, and they started their journey. When they reached the middle of the water, the crocodile started sinking low and told the monkey of his plan. The monkey did not lose his presence of mind and said that he had left his heart on the tree and that the crocodile would have to take him back. The foolish crocodile took him back to the shore. At once, the monkey leaped on the tree and told the crocodile that he was the biggest fool on the planet and the monkey had made a mistake in trusting him. Morale of the story: be cautious of who you befriend. Your best friend may be your biggest enemy.
One morning, a crane was having breakfast at the stream. He dipped his long beak in the water and caught tasty fish. A few steps away, a rabbit was munching on a carrot. Crunch! 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 He chewed the delicious, juicy carrot. Right beside a stream sat a hungry bear. He had nothing to eat. He looked at the rabbit and thought, how lucky he is. He can have his favorite food. Then the bear glanced on the crane and thought, all of them are busy filling their belly. I wish I could get something to eat. His mouth watered as he reminded of his favorite food, honey. The hungry bear roamed about the forest, but for miles there was no trace of a beehive. He dragged his legs along the path, but the pangs of hunger were now becoming unbearable for him. Suddenly the bear saw something, and his eyes twinkled. That looks like a honeycomb, he thought. Let me go near and see. It was indeed a bee's hive hanging from a low branch of a tree. The bear was overjoyed. He licked his lips. Luckily enough, there were no bees inside the hive. Just then, the bees returned after their hard day's work. As they came nearer, they saw that the bear was trying to steal from their hive. That will be delicious, the bear thought to himself. Catch the thief, the bees cried out, and the angry bees swarmed towards the bear. The bear had no option but to give up the idea of eating the honey. The bees chased him away from there, but the bear could not take this defeat. He grumbled, my precious food got out of my hand, all because of that bees. And the bear decided to revenge upon the bees. I'll destroy the honeycomb and waste the honey. If it's not mine, it will not belong to the bees either, he uttered. Thinking this, the bear stealthily came under the beehive and tried to buck it down. They might have gone out to work. I shall lick all the honey before the bees return, thought the bear. The bear jumped up, trying to snap up honeycomb. but he was unable to reach up, and the clever bees were watching all this from behind the branches of the tree. "How dare you come back, you greedy bear? I shall teach you a lesson," they buzzed of anger. When the bear saw so many bees pointed towards him, he started running away. But before he could get away, from there the bees had gathered around him. "Attack!" commanded the queen bee. The bees stung the bear all over his body. "Ah, eh!" the bear cried in pain, and he ran for his life. The bees chased him. At last, the bear jumped into the stream and immersed himself completely into the water. The bees could not find the bear, and so they returned to their hive. After some time, the bear emerged out of the water, his whole face and body wounded with the bees' stings. That day, he learned a lesson and swore never to steal honey from the bees again. Moral of the story: do not steal as stealing is bad, or it is always better to bear a little suffering silently. A long time ago, there lived 2 crows near a forest. One of them was honest, and the other was very cunning. The cunning crow used to always trick the innocent crow, but the honest crow always helped the cunning crow. One day, the honest crow was very hungry and was roaming in search of food. The crow found an oyster on the beach. In order to eat the tasty meat inside, he needed to break open the oyster. He used his big beak to take out the meat, but he failed to open the shell. He then hit the oyster with a stone, but it still remained tightly shut. No matter how much he tried, the oyster did not open. Meanwhile, another cunning crow flew by and advised him to take the oyster in his beak and flew high into the air and then drop it on the rocks. The hungry crow really liked the idea and hence followed the suggestion. The crow flew up with the oyster, and it broke open as soon as the crow dropped it from above. But the other cunning crow picked it up and ate the meat inside. By the time the first crow reached there, he could only see the pieces of broken shell. It was the only thing which was left for him. Moral of the story: do not trust people on their face value.
Once upon a time, there lived a squirrel under a big green tree. It was beginning to turn cold, so she started burying nuts under the tree. When all the nuts were buried under the big green tree, the squirrel decided to take a vacation. After 2 weeks, when she returned, the squirrel could not find her big green tree. She got worried. Next morning, the squirrel started her search again. She was very hungry and was desperately searching for some food. Suddenly, she met her friend, the frog, and told him the whole story. The frog asked her, "Where did you bury the nuts?" The squirrel replied, "Under the big green tree, but now there is a big yellow tree. My green tree has gone." The frog said, "Do you know that leaves change color in autumn? Your green tree has become yellow." When the squirrel looked for her buried nuts, she found them under the big yellow tree. She happily dug them all up. One day, a baby frog was playing in a grassy field when all of a sudden he saw a cow. When the baby frog returned, he went to his father and said, "Daddy, I saw a terrible monster. He has horns on his head and he stands on 4 feet." The father frog answered, "My son! It's an ox who stays on the farm." "I have never seen such a terrible monster before," said the baby frog. "It is not so big. It's just a little bigger than me," said Daddy Frog. The Daddy Frog took a deep breath and puffed up his cheeks and asked, "Was an ox as big as this?" The baby frog shook his head and said, "Much bigger than that." The Daddy Frog breathed in air to blow up his belly and again asked, "Was he as big as this?" "No, no, much bigger." The father frog took in more air, and not only his belly, but also his whole body grew much bigger. "Was he as big as this son?" The son replied, "No, much bigger than that." In order to make his body larger than the ox and show it off, Daddy Frog took in as much air as he could using all his energy. "Probably an ox was not as big," he stammered. Bow! Bang! His belly burst before he could finish his remark. Oh, my stomach! My poor stomach! Ah! The father frog cried. Oh, Daddy! Cried the young frog.